All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the show. I'm your host, Daniel Cody. As always, giving you commentary on all things wrestling. Before I get started, I want to thank everyone for the views, specifically on my reaction to Becky Lynch's return at SummerSlam and the squash of the century, as I like to call it. For those of you who are new, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And with that being said, let's get started with tonight's episode of Friday Night Smackdown Review. And speaking of the squash of the century, Becky Lynch opened up Smackdown unapologetic but still a fan favorite. Let's not forget the last time she was active, she had to surrender the title because she was pregnant. And now that she's back, holding a championship that she never lost, it is making SmackDown very interesting. Becky Lynch is back, but we didn't see a lot of her other than this segment because we were very excited. We thought we were going to have the confrontation of the century when Bianca came out and interrupted Becky Lynch's promo, challenging her, only to be interrupted by Zelina Vega. First of all, pretty cool hair look. Also, I will say this. It should have been, in the words of Dolph Ziggler, we all remember when he used to do that 3 years ago, but it should have been Vega who actually tried to contenderize for the championship before Becky Lynch came back. It should have been Vega instead of Carmella, because Carmella has got her butt kicked more and 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 more. I mean, the only reason she was able to come out and interrupt Vega that night was just to do her husband, Corey Graves, a favor, because Corey Graves was a special guest that night for a reason I will explain later, along with Kevin Owens. But either way, Vega disrupted the party. I can get that. Carmella disrupts the party. Either way. So, bottom line, now business really picked up when Liv Morgan came out. And so the bottom line was Bianca shut everyone down and said, "Will you face me tonight?" And Becky Lynch just said, "No," and walked off. And there was a bit of a disappointment in the crowd, and it had me wondering, is Becky Lynch a heel as they rumored it to be? Or is she just a tweener, or as I like to call them, an anti-hero? Maybe just anti-hero. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sticking with the anti-hero or the tweener. Whatever you say, you let me know in the comment section. But either way, we had a fatal four-way elimination match. I think Carmella should have got eliminated first, though. But both Carmella and Vega haven't had a good stream of luck since they've been, especially with Vega coming back, but haven't been having a lot of stream of luck, to be honest with you. But I'm glad they got those two out of the way so that the two deserving contenders could shine. And I'm talking about Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair. Yes, I said it right. I just wanted to make sure I got it right because I was moving a little fast. But yes, they put on a great match, and I'm glad they got those two out of the way so it could be a good one-on-one match. And boy, did that moment not disappoint. However, Bianca goes on to win, putting her as a contender, should I say the number one contender for the championship. And one thing I said in my review, both in my reaction as well as my SummerSlam review, is this: there needs to be a rematch, because let's face it, it was the squash of the century, and a lot of people were not happy about that. I mean, I was excited because Becky Lynch was back and she was everyone's favorite, but at the same time, for Bianca to lose in less than 23 seconds, as she counted earlier tonight in the beginning of the show, now that I think about it, I just don't think that was the best idea. It should have been more epic. Even Becky Lynch was like, "Let's tear the house down." We didn't tear the house down because it was the squash of the century or the decade. I'm just trying to come up with something famous to quote, but it was the squash of the century. But either way, moving on, and speaking of which, let me see how much time I'm working with. There are a lot of people who were upset about that, including Nikki Bella. And Nikki Bella spoke out about it, saying that this year's WrestleMania SummerSlam was her least favorite. And I can understand why that would be. Some people didn't think a lot of the things that happened were as interesting. There were a lot of interesting moments, and then there were some that were like a little bit of a 2-star. But that right there, that should have been a little more epic. And hopefully we will get a rematch at Extreme Rules. But back to Nikki Bella. She did not like that. She said it was her least favorite SummerSlam because of that moment. And in my opinion, the fact that her ex-boyfriend got beat again. Just like it, No Mercy. But either way, that was a great match, by the way. Of course, I thought Cena was going to kick out of at least one spear, but he didn't. But moving on, Nikki Bella didn't like it, and I can understand why, because she was what started. Her and Becky Lynch were a part of the women's evolution that took place in Atlanta on that episode of Monday Night Raw in August, early August of 2015. So I can understand why Nikki feels the way she feels, and I can't help but agree that that was a squash of the century. Moving on, one of the funniest things happened, and that was while Paul Heyman was being interviewed by the lovely Kayla Braxton, he was locked out of Roman's room until the Usos came out and questioned him if he had any notifications about Brock Lesnar coming back with his new hair look that's like Mordecai from the gimmick in 2004. And last time we saw him, he was working at a slaughterhouse, but now he's back to slaughter the head of the table and put all the meat that Brock slaughtered on Roman's table. But either way, a lot of tension between Paul Heyman and the Bloodline. Cool t-shirts, by the way. A lot of tension. And speaking of Kayla was anticipating Roman, but instead got the also now reformed Baron Corbin. Baron is no longer bum Corbin. He's no longer smelly Corbin. And he no longer, looks the way he does, because he looked like a homeless man. And now he's groomed up. I actually saw the video where Corbin was in Vegas and he got into a purple Corvette. That was awesome. Fun fact, ladies and gentlemen, if I can tell you a quick story, I actually went to Vegas in early May of this year. It was awesome. Of course, nobody could go last year because of the pandemic, but I actually went and it was awesome. Let me tell you guys a quick funny story. I'm going to tell you guys like this. I put a limit. Corbin was able to get himself together by gambling. Me personally, guys, don't try this at home, because I'm going to tell y'all something. I went to Vegas. I gave myself a $5 limit. And I'm going to tell you why, because those machines are a little bit hard. I mean, you put $1 in and then you lose, and then you put another $1 in and you might get maybe $5 if you get something right, but you play it too much, they'll take your money. Gambling is tricky. So despite what Corbin said in the storyline, getting rich by gambling and getting back together with his family and everything, don't try this at home. Gambling is risky. Trust me. I got a little bit of success, but I wouldn't do too much. What I do is I just set a $5 limit, and if I lose all $5, $5 is better than 50 or broke. Moving on. So don't try this at home, folks. Baron Corbin did, but moving on, I want to say this. Earlier tonight, the Dirty Dogs took on Shinsuke and Rick Booze. I want to dedicate that segment to Pat McAfee. Of course, Corey Graves is there with Michael Cole because Pat McAfee is currently at home recovering from COVID-19. Hope he's feeling a lot better and hope to see him back in WWE real soon. And I gotta say, a Shinsuke and Rick Boogs segment is not the same without Pat McAfee there. I really begin to miss him more when Shinsuke came out with that entrance. Man, get well soon, man, because tonight just wasn't the same without you, man. It just wasn't the same. We hope to get Pat McAfee back soon. Thoughts and prayers to you. But nonetheless, Shinsuke and Rick won the match. Rick Boogs showing off his strength again, lifting Dolph Ziggler like weights. So, get well soon, Pat. Moving on, in short news, Cesaro faced Chad Gable, who reminds me a lot of Kurt Angle, but the match was short-lived because Otis, the Olympic Crusher, or as I like to call him for entertainment purposes, the evil ogre, destroyed everything and crushed Cesaro like a darn pancake and just ruined the whole match. Other short news, I hope Dominic does not turn heel or get frustrated, because tonight, in a very great effort, he was in a losing effort against the returning Sami Zayn. So I really hope that Dominic could come back, because him and the Mysterios haven't really been where they wanted to be as far as matches are concerned, not having a lot of W's lately. A couple once here and there, but not as much as we're used to seeing them. Hopefully he doesn't turn heel or anything like that, but there's always next week. Now let's get down to some real business at hand. I think I covered everything. Back to Roman and the family. What? That was funny. I laughed when Paul Heyman was locked out. That was funny. Then he had a short interrogation, as I like to call it, with the Usos. And when he met Roman, he was just totally in shock. Like, aren't you going to open the door for me? It's like, oh, yes, sorry, my tribal chief. You coming? Yes, that's my tribal chief. I need someone to stare at me all day. Because we all know Paul Heyman he didn't do it with Lesnar, but ever since he got with Roman, Paul has just been the master at stare downs, because he just stares at Roman, he stares at Roman like a WWE male fan stares at a female wrestler back in the Ruthless Aggression era. And I don't condone those type of behaviors. I'm just saying he stares at him like a woman just passed by. But either way, the Bloodline celebration happened. One of these days, I think Paul Heyman is going to trip, because on the entryway, he always gives Roman the belt, gives him to the belt, and just stares, just like this, just stares. Sorry, my tribal chief. Sorry. And then holds the belt in his hands. Just the way he stares. One day, I think he's going to stare at Roman so much he bumps into a telephone pole. But either way, Roman comes out with the family. Paul Heyman speaks for him, but Roman doesn't get the biggest reception. But ironically, the Usos get their own chance, ironically. So I think the Usos are a little more popular than the head of the table himself. And then, after that, after talking for a few minutes, Finn Balor comes out, obviously wanting his shot. And remember, he said he's tired of smiling and everything. And I know he's even more upset because he was not a part of SummerSlam as far as the match card is concerned. But now we got a big question on our hands. When are we going to see Brock versus Roman? And when are we going but first, when are we going to see Finn versus Roman? Because those are two interesting matches that I would love to see. I don't know when one's going to happen, but hopefully we can get both of those matches crossed off our fan bucket lists. But of course, Finn Balor starts a fight and gets attacked by the Bloodline, only to get assistance from the Street Profits, which means obviously they have moved on from Otis the Olympic Evil Ogre and Shad Gable, who reminds me of Kurt Angle. But either way, interesting matches. Can't wait to see what happens with Brock Lesnar. But I know what Roman's going to say if he mentions Brock Lesnar, which is this. Brock won't be a full-time champion, but it is still going to be an interesting match because who's going to stop him? I mean, if Roman is as good as he is continuing to be, he's going to be up there like Walter. And Walter lasted a long time before losing by tap out. But hey, we don't know what's going to happen. But I'm excited about the future. And Corbin is back. I'm not really digging the theme though. He should have stuck with something a little more heavier on the metal, because I can tell that that's his style. But either way, that's all the time I got for you today, folks, and I'll be back with another edition of the show, giving you commentary and reviews on all things wrestling. Good night. Have a great weekend. Peace out.